Welcome to Rise from Switzerland, where the government has ordered 15.8 million doses of several different vaccines, although none have yet been approved for consumption here in Switzerland. I am Professor Demian Hodari of EHL Lausanne.
And from very sunny South Africa, my second home, a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a how's it from wherever you're joining us in the world. And thank you for joining us on Rise. I must admit, aside from me being very confused as to who my co-host is, because he seems to be wearing a tie, can you believe, Demian, we are on episode 28, 238 days since Rise began, 17 days until we count down the last minutes and seconds of 2020, an unbelievable year and an unbelievable time in all of our times. Still so many questions, so many second waves, all those vaccines being pushed around the world exactly as you said, and so much still uncertain in 2021. But this is why Rise was created. It was created for everyone who was watching, for you, with you, and because of you. And as we announced last week, we are continuing into 2021 because we still have a long way to go. There are questions still to be answered, news separated from the noise, and Rise continues to be here for you. For today, as we celebrate the end of season 2, our finale episode for this year with Professor Hodari finally putting on a tie in EHL dress code conduct, please do send us through your questions for today. Anything you want to know, it's all open. Professor Hodari, over to you. What's on today?
Well, today, first, I want a little credit that the tie is not a normal tie, right? There are little cute kids on my tie. So today's show, 'tis the reason, right? We wanted to do something a little special for the season finale. We decided the most special thing we could do was talk a little bit about how great our industry is, hospitality, travel, tourism, everything that the industry has done to give back to the world and to help the world through this challenging time, but also to look at how has giving and receiving and the logistics of all this changed as a result of the pandemic and the lockdowns, and how will that actually affect this the whole process of giving back and giving to other people. So we've got two excellent executives in residence who have lived through this throughout the year and have a lot of insights to share with us.
2020 brought so much more than we anticipated. As I always say, the roaring 20s had a bite much more intense than we expected. So please do send us through because we're curious to know, what do you hope for the year ahead? But what in the world is going on right now? As always, we have our little segment taking a look at what's happening in the world right now. But before we do, I have a special message, Demian, from my Secretary General. He is one who has always been a great supporter of Rise since day one, ever grateful to Rise and to EHL for everything it's done. A very warm message from my Secretary General, very much to you, sir. Because as we all know, and as he says, 2020 has been a historically challenging year, especially for our industry, an essential sector in terms of sustainable global development. He wishes to express personal thanks to Rise, to EHL, and to you, sir. Despite everything I warned him about, He wants to say his personal thanks to you, because through Rise, the entire community has been kept focused and kept hopeful through this year. Together, we will cautiously and thoughtfully restart safe, secure, sustainable, and trusted travel for all. So Professor Hodari, to you and to all the colleagues at EHL and to all the viewers of Rise, a sincere thank you from Secretary General Pololikashvili.
No, that's very kind. And I look forward to when he and I meet to just produce your performance review for the year. I'm looking forward to that because we always have such a nice dialogue about that. And no, we don't always agree, but we do come to a consensus. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. It's very kind.
Stunning. So where in the world are we now? Let's take a look. I wanted to look at this in terms of, if we look at the bottom of the chart, regulations. As we've talked, regulations have been a huge challenge this year because they keep changing. From April 27th, moving all the way to November 1st, we can see that the extreme closure of borders has been very much reduced as quarantines open up in terms of the option to be able to travel, but still be quarantined, as well quick testing. I just thought this was interesting from the point of view of all the different sliding regulations. But with sliding regulations comes sliding confusion, and that will be a continued challenge going into 2021, especially as countries go back into lockdowns, go into higher waves, and go into vaccine distribution. So many more questions around what in the world is going on. Euromonitor produced this, and I thought this was brilliant. Because Demian, you and I have always talked about there's no new normal, there's a next normal, because there's certainly no going back to a normal. I loved this. Euromonitor has been monitoring through the year how our wiring has changed and how we think and live will never be the same again. And they came out with 6 themes that are transforming consumer markets in all regards. Again, how we live, how we work, how we play, how we buy, how ultimately we go through our days. I thought these were fascinating, but very much so, if you look at bottom row, middle one, the new normal, what's here to stay. What we do know is even with the vaccine, even with the testing, even with the travel, the masks, the whole hands, face, space, as we say in the UK, that is going to be the norm of 2021. And that's a good thing, because until we have tamed the beast of COVID-19, all of us need to be cautious through 2020, 2021, and onwards. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I think, well, let me show this. I promised I was going to share good news and happy thoughts today, and I just couldn't do it. My colleague Scott Galloway from NYU, he had this post the other day, and I just thought it was so impactful, right? Deadliest days in American history. You can see the famous hurricane in Galveston, Texas, 8,000. Antietam from the Civil War, September 11th, and then last Thursday, last Wednesday, last Tuesday, last Friday, and then Pearl Harbor. Scary, even scarier is that the data here is a little outdated because we broke the number 3,000 just a couple of days ago. In fact, on December 9th, which is the date from this post. And it just puts into perspective a little bit the traumatic effect that what's happening is actually having on the world, and that it isn't a one-time event. It is every day now. A September 11th number of people are dying from this virus. And I just thought, as we wrap up this season of Rise, forgetting the name, that we're actually in some ways in such a worse situation than we were when we began in terms of the devastating effect it's having on people and their lives. We're in a better place in terms of things are starting to look a little bit more positive because of the vaccine. And people have learned, I think, in some places, not everywhere, how to coexist with this virus and to make those adjustments, including those 6 categories that you mentioned. So I just thought this was a very powerful message, and I agree with the bottom: wear a mask and avoid gatherings. Everybody, we're almost through this. And then I have another statistic which is a little bit more positive. So last week we saw the initial public offerings of 2 hospitality companies, DoorDash, the food delivery service, and Airbnb that everybody knows. And both of these stocks rose dramatically on their first day of trading. Airbnb rose 113% to close at $145 a share. That's $86 billion valuation. That is double what Marriott is worth. And Marriott has been around for 75 years, and as we know, manages and operates thousands and thousands of hotels. On the other side, DoorDash grew by 86% in its initial day of trading to close at $72 billion, which is more than Domino's and Chipotle, 2 of the larger restaurant chains in America combined. And I think this is really interesting because, as we know, restaurants are closing during this pandemic just because of in-restaurant dining being closed and even outside seating being closed. But the delivery side, as we've pointed out throughout the last 9 months of Rise, has been increasing. Revenues and orders have tripled between September and back in January of this year compared to the year before, but the company's still losing millions and millions of dollars a day. And I think what this is pointing out is largely the fact that everybody expects an end to the pandemic and the long-term implications from everything that's happened. Travel will rebound, which is why Airbnb, people are bullish on that. And companies and technologies and new innovations that have taken off as a result of the pandemic are also going to continue to thrive, as in the case of DoorDash. So 2 examples of maybe positive impacts on the industry in terms of firms figuring out how to react now, but also to have sustainable strategies going forward.
Demian, I must say, I love, love, love that you've shown this, because it also demonstrates something that we talked about from the beginning of RISE, that we're living the great hypothesis in terms of how is the industry and the world going to adjust. And do you remember, sir, way at the back of the beginning of RISE, back April, May, June, there were so many questions we would receive about Airbnb. What about Airbnb? What about Airbnb, and controls and protocols and safety? And they went from being in a position of question mark to turning it around, actually, which has been interesting, because people want environments they can control and that they can trust. And I also love that Airbnb, when they have gone through all the protocol training with their hosts, it doesn't just help the Airbnb premises, the entire family that is a host also benefits from the cleaning protocols as well. So I thought this is really interesting, and how a member of the hospitality community that was questioned at the beginning has now really become a champion through this process. I love that you've mentioned this, and we can actually put a figure to it and how much it's worth to the industry.
This week's headlines. I've got two headlines for you this week, Anita. The first one, I just want to take a different perspective now on the whole food delivery app, right? So we just mentioned DoorDash, 86% increase, worth more than multiple restaurant companies combined. But there is that darker side of this industry, which is that the workers that are delivering your food are struggling. And I just wanted to, I took some notes because I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget anything. On the one hand, great that the companies that are employing them are doing well if they are able to share this with their employees, right? Paying them more, providing them better services, providing them maybe with employee stock possibilities. But it hasn't played out yet. You know, the industry that DoorDash and Uber Eats and Uber, et cetera, pertain to, this gig economy, they just won a large legal fight in the US, in actually the most liberal place of all, California, not too long ago, to keep being able to classify these drivers not as employees, but as independent contractors. And this means such things as no minimum wage, no guaranteed salary on any given day, no overtime, no health benefits. In some cases, tips. When you have tipped on your credit card the driver, the companies have actually used that to subsidize the wage that they are supposed to pay the driver. Now, there was a lawsuit against that, and DoorDash had to apologize for that and repay people, et cetera. But it shows a little bit the extent to which these companies will go to protect their stance versus employees, because the way they could actually one day make money is because these are not employees and their labor costs are so low. Remember, most of these companies are not actually turning profits yet, so it's difficult for them to actually do more for these people that are their drivers, but they're certainly not going to do more as long as they can avoid it, because that's the advantage that they have against firms that do look at these people like employees. And then if you look at the drivers, they've got issues in terms of just the lack of not only those kind of benefits, but the daily job, the grind it is on that. Ooh, I'm supposed to move forward. Okay, headline number 2. It's a quick one. Holidays in 2021 will be fewer, longer, and closer to home. We know that. We've been talking about that for 6 months on this show. I just like the next sentence, but at least they will happen. Like, I saw that and I actually got a little chill, believe it or not, me, saying, I actually do think people are going to be able to travel next year. It will start to happen. People will travel for leisure. There'll be some more business travel. It will be different next year, and it will be different forever, but there will be travel next year. And finally, I would say I'm confident that we can say that. Still concerned about a lot of things, but confident that there will be travel next year. And I just wanted to leave people with that thought.
It's amazing how emotional you become when you put a tie on. It's quite remarkable. One thing I just want to go back on without changing the slide, because our Wizards of Oz had said move on, but your point about the delivery drivers, one thing that really scares me about what's happened this year, we've become a very impatient society. I'm hungry, I want my meal in 20 minutes. That's a huge amount of pressure on a lot of people that, as you say, are buzzing around trying to make us happy and get our bellies fed with not a lot of appreciation. So I'm kind of sad about that rewiring. If we go to mine now, admittedly, we agreed, sir, we were going to have a happy program, but you being out, sorry, you go back to your bin. Okay, just to say, you got your coffee and my gingerbread. If ever there was a time to eat gingerbread on Rise, now's the time. And no, I don't, I shut my eyes when I bite their heads off. I thought this was very cool. Last week, the vaccine started to be rolled out in the UK, and one of the first people on the list was a gentleman named William Shakespeare. And I just thought this was almost Mother Nature's way of winking of, okay, for a little while, you guys might think you're in control, but we're going to make sure something poetic happens when it comes to this really dramatic year. I thought this was stunning, absolutely stunning. And it goes back to the question, to vaccine or not vaccine? That is the question of 2021. We then go to our next slide, which is all about Santa. And he's making his list and he's disinfecting it twice, but he's going to be out there. So whether it's through shields, whether it's through plastic hugs, whatever it might be, it's still important. We live in a huggable world, and now's the time for wishes. And we especially saw that when it came to a lot of the letters to Santa and a lot of the mental health challenges that have been coming through. These kiddies talking about how hard this year has been, and they want daddy to have his job back. They want mommy to be able to work from home, but still be able to be huggable. It's been a really interesting time, but Santa will continue. And then we go to the next, which is my video, which I thought was really special because the ability for people to be together at Christmas time is critical. We've seen the impact that has on mental health, but we still need to be careful. And one of the countries I absolutely love and adore, which is very deeply embedded in my heart, is Ireland. And when it came to leaders of the global stage, I thought the Irish really got it right. Enjoy.
As Minister for Foreign Affairs, we've been working on the Santa Claus issue for a number of weeks now. And it's important to say to all children in the country that we regard Santa Claus's travels as essential travel for essential purposes, and therefore he is exempt from the need to self-quarantine for 14 days and should be able to come in and out of Irish airspace and indeed in and out of Irish homes without having to restrict his movement. But I am assured that children should not stay up at night because he does need to social distance. And so people need to keep at least 2 metres away at all stage to make sure that we keep him safe and indeed children as well. So he's exempt, he's coming, he's confirmed that, and he appreciates the fact that Ireland has ensured that in a very, very different Christmas in 2020, the visit of Santa Claus will be something that will remain consistent.
I just thought that was so great. I presume he has a lot of vaccines in his sack this year, but I just thought that's pretty Christmas classy. So thank you to the people of Ireland.
Very nice. Good choice this week, Anita. And still, interestingly, still a little bit about aviation, I notice. The reindeer. We've got our second poll for our audience today, so we'd like you to take a moment to answer the following question, please, and then we'll bring on our guests to discuss your answers. And that question is, how has this year's crisis changed your approach to giving? Please choose one of the following. All right, let's see those results. All right, Anita, stronger focus on local needs. So I think it looks like most people are, maybe because they've been stuck at home and in that neighborhood, they've gotten maybe to know the neighborhood better, know the people better, and realize that their area could use more help. But, it depends how you define local, right? Giving time. Yeah, go ahead.
I love that, though, because we've been talking all year about how the definition of the word community has changed. It's no longer our social media communities. It's the people right next door whose small businesses we've seen shut down during the year. I love that.
Yeah. And I like that it's time more than material or money. People have time and are probably more able to share that. And a lot of people have been hit financially and may have less ability to do that. So still, probably everybody's still giving just in different ways and to different people.
I'm curious, does that mean though that all of the gifts that me and my Wizards of Oz had planned for you, you actually want us to give away and rather spend more time with you over the holidays?
I would say give your time to other people, give the gifts to other people, just keep giving rise to all of us next year.
Good answer, sir.
Thank you. All right, let's bring on St. Nicholas and Joseph, please.
Oh, wait, that's quite funny. I never thought about that.
It just came to me. Just came to me.
Brilliant. It is our great pleasure to bring to the executives and residents stage of RISE two people who are perfect for this conversation this week. We wanted to, as we said, make our finale for episode 2 and the warm up to, or series 2 and the warm up to series 3 about really the gift of giving and how this year, for everything it has taken, it has given a great deal. And so we have two superb entities, an individual from an entity that is working globally and an entity that magnifies that. Firstly, we have with us Joseph Black. He's the head of major giving and partnerships at Mary's Meals. Now, Mary's Meals is an organization that is Scotland-based. And admittedly, I discovered it 10 years ago as the founder, Magnus McFarlane, was one of the first Mary's Meals global champions when it came to CNN Heroes. For currently, I believe it's 8 pence a day, they are feeding through a school feeding program 1.8 million children every single day. The premise being a child needs to be able to go to school, to be able to grow, to be able to evade poverty, and to be able to minimize risk. They can't learn if they don't eat. How are they going to eat on a daily basis and free up the family from that pressure? So Mary's Meals was created, and it really is a remarkable institution. We also have along a champion who is a gentleman, NIKLAS, who's come from ALAYA. It is a Swiss company providing software that helps corporate employees to connect, volunteer with and donate to charities and NGOs around the world. So effectively taking an entity like Mary's Meals and magnifying that and bringing its benefit to the world and those people who want to make a difference. So from our side, Joseph and NIKLAS, thank you for joining us. We are thrilled to have you with us.
Yeah, welcome, guys. And let me start by asking you what you think about the results from that poll. Basically, more emphasis on local needs and more focus on time as opposed to money and things. Joseph, let me ask you to give your thoughts about that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Demian, and thanks so much for inviting me on the show. It's been really brilliant to watch so far, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you for having me here. It's a really interesting poll and an interesting question. I think actually I've been astounded by the amount of generosity that this pandemic has shown across the board. I was in Glasgow at the start of the pandemic, and there was a lot of incredible local things going on, local volunteer groups. And we've seen that in Mary's Meals for a long time, a lot of local volunteer groups in the UK and all the other countries that we work in who are really key to growth. And I think COVID has really spurred people on to be unbelievably generous in this time, and with both with their time and their resources. It is a unique situation. I was just thinking about this this morning, how Mary's Meals has responded to many crises over the years. Some of them very particular to regions, for example, conflicts in sub-Saharan Africa or food insecurities. The COVID pandemic has been truly global and affected not only the countries that we feed Mary's Meals in, but also the countries where we raise money. So it doesn't surprise me that there's been this focus on the local need, because it is something that's very unique about this time, isn't it?
Okay, thanks very much. And NIKLAS, let me ask you, have you guys seen a shift towards people donating more time as opposed to money or goods, or is that not reflective of what you've seen through your organization?
Yeah, definitely no. And same thing here, very happy to be on the show. We've seen a shift, but I think in a few different ways. One, I think there's been a huge shift away from kind of traditional community service onto everything that's virtual. So people helping online, various different charities around the world. So big shift to donations and volunteering. And a lot of people just also locally having some really creative ideas about how they can give back in their community. We had users that hang up in their apartments that they could do grocery shopping for people that were at risk. We had people going over to elderly homes where they would read books for the people. with safe distancing and things like that, or helping their colleagues do homework with their kids. So just really inspired by how creative people got during the crisis and finding new ways of doing good. And as Joseph said, also really inspired by just the amount of giving back that has happened. We've seen more than double than the same period last year of giving back, whether it's time or donations through the platform. So that's really nice to see.
That is nice to hear. Anita?
Question, because I think one thing that's been amazing this year is that everyone has been impacted by need, whether it's psychological need, healthcare needs, professional needs, whatever it might be. And Joseph, you and I talked at the beginning of all of this challenge this year about the risk to, i.e. Mary's Meal, and people not being able to donate because they just don't have the ability to give right now when they're feeling quite needy. And yet you experienced a surge, which you've shared, which is interesting. But there have been a lot of questions around, how do I know I can trust the donation? I'd love to understand, Joseph, from yourself and NIKLAS, when people are looking at doing something because they feel they need to, how do they evaluate the legitimacy of it to make sure that the money is going where it should and with a minimum amount of risk of being fraudulent, or even risk of being a significant amount of the percentage taken for admin and not going to the end recipient? Joseph, from your side, because you've got a great module and model with Mary's Meals.
Thanks for that. Yeah, Mary's Meals. I think it's, first of all, it's so important, as you said, to be to really know how you're giving and what the impact is. I think very often the more transparent charities are really worth researching and just learning about exactly how they spend donations. We have a commitment that 93% of everything that we receive goes directly on our charitable objectives, and that's largely responsible. What causes the price point of £15.90, so it costs £15.90 to feed a child for an entire year with Mary's Meals, and that is possible because of that kind of that focus on the 93% and keeping our overheads very low and low cost and no frills, is also, which relates to NIKLAS's incredible company. It also is very reliant on volunteers. So we rely on local volunteers everywhere we are. So that's here in Scotland and in the UK. We have some fantastic volunteers in London, where I've been working recently. We also rely on local volunteers to actually provide the meals. And that's what allows us to be such a kind of frugal organization and how we operate. So in Malawi alone, for example, where our biggest project is, we have over 80,000 volunteers, and that's to a ratio of around 150 members of staff. So it really relies on community goodness, which is similar to what NIKLAS was just saying as well. The whole work of Mary's Meals relies on that community approach. And it has been interesting how the pandemic has highlighted that and brought that out in so many different ways in our communities locally and globally as well.
And like the poll, it might not be about people giving their money, but you still need the volunteers to give the time to distribute the food. That's a great point. NIKLAS, what have you seen? Yeah,
I think giving back can sometimes be kind of a black box for people. It's difficult to know who you can give to, where you can give to. And so very often it's difficult to identify who are the NGOs out there that are doing the good work and who can I donate to. So, and if you look at one of the statistics that was definitely part of one of our core values at ALAYA as well, is 70 to 80% of all the giving back goes to the top 1% of the biggest NGOs. So that's the Red Cross, the WWF, which are amazing organizations doing a lot of great work, but very little of those donations and giving back goes to some of those really amazing gems like Mary's Meals that nobody knows about because they don't necessarily have the same bandwidth of communication or marketing than those big NGOs. So what's really important for us as well is to distribute those funds also to some of those grassroots NGOs. And I think that's where Joseph comments is really relevant. They have these statistics on the local impact where they can really tell you each pound that you donate to the charity, what is happening with it. And they can be so much more transparent than some of the big NGOs. So what we see is that users, and it goes a little bit back to the local needs, they really want to give back to smaller charities, not necessarily those big known ones, but they want to give to ones that actually have those really deep values and local impact.
Indeed.
Interesting. I want to ask a little bit about how has the lockdown and the pandemic impacted what you guys do? The way people give, the way you interact, the way people can receive donations, etc. has there been a big impact, or is it just an impact on the amount, but the logistics and it hasn't really changed? I mean, NIKLAS, maybe you want to start with that.
Yeah. So I mean, the companies and employees on our platform have various different ways of doing good. Before the pandemic, one of the most popular ways of doing good was local community service. So distributing soup at a homeless shelter, donating your blood, things like that. Of course, with the pandemic, many of those activities were very, very difficult to organize. So we saw a huge shift to virtual volunteering, where people wanted to volunteer from home. And so we've seen a lot of shift towards virtual skill-based volunteering, where people were helping from home, and you would say, hey, I have skills in marketing, maybe I can help this NGO through Skype, through team meeting, to do their communication campaign for next year. And just being really creative on how they could help virtually, not only with NGOs, but also how they could change their own lifestyle at home. I think a lot of people wanted to reflect on how sustainable their lifestyle is and things like that. So we have a lot of people through the platform that are starting to become vegetarian for a week, or buy a reusable bottle, or start recycling better, and just starting to change some of their own habits that can have a huge impact as well on the world. And I think it's a snowball effect that's starting to catch on.
You think that's a long-term trend, not only virtual volunteering, but some of these learnings that people are having, these self-realizations? Do you think that's long-term?
I think so. I think that when people start changing their habits at home, especially when it's the form of a fun approach, where they do it together with colleagues, they actually start realizing that this can have an impact on the way that they live, whether that's also working on a more healthier lifestyle. With a lot of people working at home, things like burnout and things like that are becoming a big topic. So having challenges where you can work on mindfulness, on your physical health, your mental health, things like that, it's actually like purpose is now a more 360 approach. Before, it used to be a lot of giving back money and time, and now it's a lot more about also changing yourself to then be able to change the world itself. And I hope it's a trend that's there to stay.
Joseph, can you share, please, the story that you shared with us about how Mary's Meals responded when your primary distribution vehicle, i.e. schools, were shut down, to Demian's point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in March, it was probably a low point in the Mary's Meal story, I would say, because all of almost every school in the world closed temporarily, and it was very hard to see what was going to happen next. So we were in a situation where we were feeding 1.6 million children, over 1.6 million children in schools, and then in the week, by the end of the week, all of those schools were shut. An unbelievable challenge to the organization, and our approach was very simple. It was once we'd sort of considered the situation, it was that if formal education has to stop, then the feeding of children can't stop even temporarily in that situation. And the impact of COVID-19 had such a profound impact on the families of the children that we serve. We normally work in the world's poorest communities, and so often those families work in the informal sector, and that was really badly hit by the pandemic. So our approach was that we needed to keep feeding the children even if formal education was paused. So within around a month, in the 19 countries that we feed Mary's Meals in, there was different local solutions to that very, very large challenge of how to safely, within local restrictions, feed those children. So most often it formed a community distribution approach where the parents of the children enrolled in the schools would line up in a socially distanced way and receive a take-home ration of food for maybe 2 weeks of food. And we did that. And within about a month, we were feeding more than 1.6 million children again in that time. Since the summer holidays, it's become very mixed. And again, just like the UK, where I am at the moment, there's regional laws about what you can and can't do, and that's the same across the 19 countries that we feed. So there's a blended approach at the moment where some children are in schools getting Mary's Meals in the perfect version of the model, and then there's some who are still relying on community distribution. But definitely, probably one of the biggest challenges I think the organization's ever faced, and it was largely down to the local ingenuity of our volunteers and partners and members of staff which caused that to happen. So that's probably from the programmatic point of view. From the fundraising point of view, or the raising awareness point of view, it's been a very, very amazing response, I would say, from our core supporters who have given even more generously over the last year. There's maybe been a particular challenge around reaching new audiences. For example, some of the events we had planned, Anita, you and I were due to do an event in London, which was postponed. And there was many events like that where it was harder for us to reach out to new audiences. But incredibly, a lot of our core support have just really rallied and supported us through this time. And it's been an incredible, successful year for us. We're now in a position where we can expand, which is so exciting from our point of view.
Nice surprise. Demian,
Yes.
I think we have some questions backstage coming through.
All right, let's take some, I mean, there's always interesting questions from the audience, so let's see what we got. Today we have Grace asking us.
Yes, our first question is, how do you make sure that those getting help do not risk it stopping if the money runs out?
Right, people become dependent maybe to a certain degree, and then what happens if the benefactor disappears? Have you had that happen, or how would you, how do you answer this? Maybe Joseph, you want to start?
Yes, no problem. So we have a very generational approach to how we think this work it has an impact. So if we start feeding in a school, we want to stay there for a generation, so that we want to ensure that daily meals will be served in that school for a generation. And that's just so that the children can come into the classroom, get the education they need for the future, and become the local leaders in their communities. And it really does take a generation to do that. We believe of consistent school feeding to encourage children into the classroom. So it's so important to us that we have that consistency. And what makes that sustainable is that we believe that our vision for that every child receives a daily meal in school is very compelling, and that people want to get behind that. And it's that leads to this grassroots movement of people who support Mary's Meals across the world that grows every day, of people who share that vision. And it's often the very small donors, the donors who give small amounts, direct debits, who lead to this very sustainable approach. We don't want to be ever too reliant on major giving, which actually is my role. We would never want that to become more than, say, a third of the organization's income, because then that might leave potential gaps. But we believe instead that if we share this story of what we're doing, this very simple mission, that people will come on board, and that way we can provide those meals for a generation across the board. So that would be the start maybe of that response, but it maybe needs longer time to do it justice.
So interesting. Okay, another question, Grace?
Yes, this is from Felipe. He wants to know, how do you decide where to give the money when so many places are in need?
So it's a little different maybe for you, Nicholas, but how do you guys, do you accept everybody onto your platform, or do people have to meet certain criteria? And how do you ensure that it can work and people can actually, find the right things to do without being overwhelmed, for example?
Yeah, it's actually an approach in two phases for us. The first approach is what kind of projects and charities do we accept on our platform and in our network. So for that, we do have a charity team that assesses every NGO that contacts us to be put onto the platform, and that we are quite rigorous on that assessment to be sure that there's only quality partners that are on our network. And then once they're inside the network, then the employee or the user can choose from all the different projects that are on the platform. And it's true, sometimes it can be very difficult to choose. But it is important to acknowledge that doing good and giving back can be very personal, or is very personal. We all have different skills we want to share. We all have different ways in which we want to help. And we all have different types of causes we're passionate about, whether that's the environment, animals, health, education. So what we do a lot is trying to use technology as a way to make the whole process easier. So we call it a little bit the Netflix of doing good, but the idea is to be able to take all of the user preferences and then do automated suggestions that user could help. So Anita, Demian, and Joseph, you would have totally different suggestions on our platform based on the activities you've done in the past, based on the skills that you want to share, and based on the causes you're interested in. And that allows kind of technology to make the whole choice of thousands of activities easier for you, so you can find your perfect project and help that project.
Nicholas, you said something really important there, because one thing I've always loved is the concept of synergies, that Joseph has the porridge and the objective in terms of the school children. You have the platform for magnification. So it might not be about, Nicholas, you need to go out and cook the porridge, but you have the amplifying vehicle. So it's about creating those synergies. And even after the meet the guests that we had last week, so you could both meet pre-going on stage, both of you jumped and said, can I have each other's email addresses? So the opportunity to give might not be the end point of the recipient getting the product, it can be actually the supply chain that's required. It's a really interesting one, and everyone has some way in which they can help directly or indirectly, which is quite nice.
Sure. And I think we really believe that technology has a big role to play in that, because it has this amplifying power. It can make things easier, and it can show people amazing NGOs like Joseph's NGO that he's working for, and they just need more visibility so they can get help.
Really.
Yeah.
So going back to your point, Nicholas, before about 70% of the resources going to the top 1%. Though they don't need you as much, right? You're really focused on the smaller players, but are they also using technology in new ways to amplify their own abilities? I mean, I imagine they are, right?
Yeah, they are. And we do work with a lot of those players that I've mentioned before. And I think it's not about ignoring them, because they are doing amazing work. I think it's about leveling the playing field, right? It's about putting them all on the same playing field and saying, well, here's a small NGO that only has, a very small annual budget and 3 volunteers, and here's the Red Cross, and you can choose who you want to donate to. This is going to be the impact if you donate here, and this is going to be the impact if you donate here. And then it's up to the people to really choose on the platform what they want to donate to, what they want to help.
And it's also, as well, it depends on, I know from the UN side, it depends on the nature of the crisis and the scale. Whereas you've got the UNHCRs, the World World Food Program, that have the logistical machine that can go out and get the impact. And you're working at a different layer of those who needn't wait, getting them involved as soon as possible. So it's all about what is the nature of the crisis and access. Some places are just very difficult to access. So it's a huge
we have another question that we want to get to. So Grace, you want to jump in?
Yes, we have a question from one of our regular watchers, Steve, who wants to know, has the hospitality industry come to the aid of Mary's Meals by offering their hotel kitchen facilities to prepare food, or perhaps in other ways? How can we as an industry step up our involvement?
Great question, Steve.
Fantastic question. Thanks so much for that, Steve. That's brilliant. That's a really, really interesting one. We have incredible kind of corporate partnerships throughout the UK and throughout the world, which all look very different. There was a big company that got in touch recently, I won't name, that were going to do some incredible kind of staff fundraisers, and it was very much about team spirit and about kind of bringing their staff team together in a way to raise money for Mary's Meals and raise awareness. We've also had some hotels in the past that just do a fantastic job of raising awareness for this work. So having maybe posters or leaflets in their lobby and things like that. So it's always very unique. I think when people ask me how they can help Mary's Meals, it's a little bit like what Anita was saying. It's often very unique to your circumstances, and there's ways of being creative about how to do that. But from a Mary's Meals point of view, what we love doing is raising awareness, finding places to tell our story. The simple idea of school feeding. So if there's a hotel or hospitality industry is a perfect way of doing that, because you have so many people coming to in your doors. So if there was a way of raising awareness about the simple work that we do, that would be incredible. And obviously social media and things like that is a fantastic way of doing that too. But please do get in touch with me if you would like to have a more specific conversation about that.
Thanks, Joe. Hey, Nicholas, I want to ask you maybe a similar question. Have you seen hospitality firms, so let's just take hotels and restaurants for now, maybe who have this excess capacity now, this kitchen space or hotel rooms, are they able to use your service to provide that to other NGOs or to other people in need? Does that work with your platform?
Yes, definitely. It's I think it's interesting how especially the hospitality scene has used all of the equipment, the skills to really help out during this pandemic. Especially EHL, for example, has done some amazing partnerships over the pandemic as well with local soup kitchens here in Switzerland, where, for example, over several months, a few times per week, a few chefs and students from EHL were going to that soup kitchen to make that dinner there absolutely exceptional that night. So there's a few of those things that are going on and that are really inspiring to see how everybody's using their skills. And I think especially hospitality, whether it's for shelter, whether it's for nutrition, for all of those things, they have a really important role to play. And even some hotels that are opening up spaces for homeless people to stay for nights and things like that. I think it's been a really inspiring story.
Stunning. And apparently we have a very inspiring last question coming through from Grace.
Yes, we do. It's actually from Alberto. He would like to know if you can explain how we can send money to contribute to feeding children, where and how we can do it.
Maybe Joseph.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really good of you, Alberto. Thanks for the question. So if you go on our website, www.marysmeals.org, then you can find all about how to donate to this work in whatever country you are in. So we have around 16 countries around the world. In Europe, North America, we have registered organizations for Mary's Meals where we have teams on the ground that you can donate to. So if you type that in, it should take you to your local website, the one that's closest to you, and then you can donate through that or through the international website. And yeah, so thank you so much. And it would be fantastic if you wanted to connect with us in any way as well. We'd be delighted to hear from you.
And Demian, in case Alberto doesn't pick up the website at the end of this, because we are going to post both of your websites, Joseph and NIKLAS, can you assist Alberto?
I think I know how to get in touch with him. He may want to change the name to Maria's Meals, but maybe based on the amount of the donation, we could discuss that afterwards.
Stunning. On this, I just want to, before we wrap up, I just want to also say that when we were talking, we always say on Rise, this is not about promoting businesses. It was about leaders coming on as execs in residence to talk about their perspective. But today was the exception. We wanted you to be able to have that chance because this is a time where I found one thing that was interesting this year. It wasn't just people needing. A lot of people who were safe this year felt guilty and needed to do something to help those who weren't. So for everyone who's watching, please, if you feel compelled to do something, do something. And it might not be through NIKLAS or Joseph, but you can use them as contact points on how to make the right decisions. I think that's really important. So I shall let you close, sir.
So, I mean, I can't really say much more than what Anita has said before. NIKLAS and Joseph, you know, you both do such great work for so many people that you know, Anita and I are trying to help the industry in our little way, but you guys put us to shame with everything that you do, and it just really was rewarding. And I actually learned this virtual volunteering to me is just fascinating. It's something I want to look into more. So I learned probably more, and I'm not just saying this, more today than in any previous episode, probably because it's not an area that I know enough about. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for coming and helping us. And hopefully your websites won't crash after all of our viewers get in touch with you. But if they do, you know, look on the bright side. So have a great problem to have. Have a great holiday season. Keep doing the great work. And thanks again for being here with us.
Thank you both so much, especially for ungrouching the grouch, even if just for a few minutes.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much.
Well, that was special.
No, and it puts in perspective sometimes what someone does or doesn't do, or what we do, and we all try to do good in our own ways. And sometimes you get people who really, you know, found a way to do this as the primary thing they do, and it's very inspirational. Yeah. There you have the two websites, www.alayagood.com and www.marysmeals.org.uk. Obviously, those will be up later on our YouTube video as well, but do feel free to reach out to those organizations, and you don't even have to tell them you learned about it on Rise. Just do whatever you want. And thank you to everybody for what you can do for these organizations.
And we move to our next segment, sir. Perfect for you once we finish the inbox.
Okay. Grace, any more questions that you want Anita and I to address?
Yes, we just have one question for you both, which is, what are you hoping for in 2021?
Anita, you go first.
Oh man,
That was quicker.
Rude. No, age before beauty. I think you should go first.
That was quicker.
I'm hoping for responsibility. I'm hoping that as we work through this 2021, it's not going to be a flip of the switch. We still have COVID-19 to work through, 2020 to work through. We still need to be really careful. People are frustrated, they're flippant, they're forgetting. Because this is invisible, we've got a long way to go. So I'm hoping for responsibility of protocols, of behavior, of attitude, and people just being careful so we can all take off our masks one day and hug again. And you?
Well, selfishly, I'm hoping to see my parents that I haven't seen since 2019. And maybe on a bigger perspective, I hope we've learned something from this. I know people have learned, but have governments learned? Has the world learned? Have organizations learned? And that this could eventually, we could look back at this 5 or 10 years down the road and say, okay, that was a horrible year, devastating for so many people. But look at the ways the world is better now as a result of having experienced that. So I hope we start to see some of that next year. I'm not sure we're there yet.
Stunning. So what's next?
I don't know what to do with that.
Your horns.
Well, what are horns?
Look at your horns.
Aren't they ears?
No, you've got ears.
Oh, I see that now. But so do you then.
No, I have earmuffs.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. I have no idea what am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to be naughty? That's so difficult for me. I'm always so nice.
Can I throw it at you?
Okay.
Okay. 2020 has been an interesting one because we've all had to do something to cope to get through this. What has been your guilty pleasure during 2020 to help you cope with getting through the year? That you can tell us, that we can have on video, that won't get you fired from your job.
I've exercised more this year than in probably any previous year, but I don't know if that's a guilty pleasure. I think that's a healthy pleasure. Guilty pleasure. I've discovered that I like to drink rye, which is a form of whiskey. I don't drink it every day. When I drink it, it's maybe 1 or 2 fingers worth, but I really like the taste. And I do find that just sipping that in the evening for an hour or so, it just takes me a while and I forget about it, is actually very peaceful and relaxing. And I think it's probably that's my guilty pleasure.
Huh. Good
And
answer.
I am of age, I am legal to drink, so it's okay.
Hey, if it
And
takes
you?
away the couch.
And you?
I'm going to be naughty and not answer that.
Oh, okay. That's not fair at all. All right. And I won't ask you what you've done to be nice because that will take us too long because you're such a nice person.
You know what I must say? I'm going to share something though, and I say this with pride from a business point of view. One thing that my team and I did from the beginning of this year is say, we are safe. And if we can do something, we're going to. So every single month we've been making a donation in cash or kind, whatever it's been. And in November, October, we had a fantastic new client. And on the way into the debrief of our project, a decision was made by our business to donate 100% of the project fees to 4 charities and projects that we chose between us for kiddies school programs and mental health for kids. 2 weeks after the debrief, my client called me and asked, can he match the donation through the foundation after his mother? Which I just thought was just glorious. So people want to do something, they need to know where it's safe to do it. And I thought that was just magic.
That is very nice.
Yeah, but I still think the horns is the best thing on this whole segment. Stunning. So backstage elves, we had a deal, Professor Hodari, that I refused to come on and do the finale unless we revealed our backstage elves and got all of us a chance to be able to say thank you to all our viewers at Rise. So Chief Wizard, Jessica, over to you to do the technology, please.
Hi, this is Sarah from the Backstage team. I wish you a very happy holiday and a happy new year. See you in 2021.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So now everyone's met Jessica, Grace, and Joanne. And if you're really good as an audience, Grace will flare her nostrils for us as her elf trick.
Not happening.
Anything you lovely elves want to say to our magic viewers of Rise before we see them again in January?
Just thank you for everyone who tuned in all year. it's really been the highlight for all of us. And I hope everyone has a happy holiday and a really great new year.
Yeah, like to wish everybody a happy holiday, sending you lots of love and health for 2021. Looking forward to seeing you all for season 3.
Oh, we've lost our audio on Hobbs.
I could read that. It said, Demian, you're the best. Anita, you're in second place. So that was great, Joanne. Thank you so much for those kind words. You don't have to say that, but that was naughty, but also nice. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
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 So Anita, I think that's wrapping up another 28 episodes. I have to say, I didn't. You always say, who would have thought? I never even thought we'd have a second episode or a third. I didn't have any idea how long this would go. So 28 episodes. I mean, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
It's amazing, and it's been such a pleasure, Demian. I hate to say it, but I've really loved working with you this year. And to everyone, front stage, backstage, viewers, audiences, family members, thank you for being with us. We will be back on the 18th of January, Monday, so giving everyone a chance to have a good rest and some nice time off before we kick off the new year. Please, everyone, anything you want to see next year, please do let us know. We want to know what's of interest to you. We are always here for you. You can see the email address on the website. You will find all of our episodes. You can watch how Grouch has progressed through the year and how he hasn't moved aside from the occasional blinks. And until then, as always, please stay safe, stay strong, stay hopeful, keep your hands clean, keep with Rise, and take good care. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. See you in January.
Everybody have a safe and happy holiday season. And we do look forward to seeing you on the 18th of January. Same place, same time, same outfit for Anita. Bye-bye.